Hello. The heater's running because it's kind of cold outside, so I'm going to try to talk louder and hopefully the audio picks up. Um, Yesterday, I did a video on the changing images of man, semi textbook. Um, Today, I'm going to start discussing chapter 2 of that book. So, chapter 2 is titled Some Formative Images of Man in the Universe. And it starts off with them wanting purer types of image that fulfill one or more of the following criteria. The image should fulfill one or more of these criteria, according to them. How the image of humankind in relation to other forces can influence the way in which a culture develops. The second criteria has significantly shaped or affected the development of our culture in directions that need re examination. And then the third one offers unrealized potential for moderating the problems that are unique to our time. And so they then put a table into this chapter titled Dominant Images of Humankind Throughout History. And what they say is, I'm just going to cover a few of them from the table because there's some unique ones that they like first they well it wasn't their first on the list, but they had the Semite image of humankind, and they dated that around 2350 BC, and they classify the groups within that utilize this image as Orthodox Jewish, Christian, and Islamic faiths. And what they said about that Semite image is that the human, as a mere creature fashioned of clay to serve the gods or some god as a slave, but superior to and having dominion over nature, a notion of the chosen people. So that's what they say about the Semitic image of mankind. And they say that that image stands in its present form as an obstacle to emergence of new ecological understandings. Okay, so first off, they're saying that around 2350 BC is when Orthodox Jewish, Christian, and Islamic faiths images of man started to form. And they say that, I mean, first off, they're totally misunderstanding that humans were superior to and having dominion over nature while serving God or some gods as a slave. Um, God did create humans out of the dust of the earth and form them into human beings. And what they're not stating about this Semitic image of man is uh, we were to have dominion not as slaves. When Adam and Eve were told to procreate, and in the Garden of Eden, they had work to do, but it wasn't slave labor, and God was with them. And then they did the one thing he said not to do. And then, so the next image of mankind, humankind throughout history, and what they say about it is early Christian Muslim, 100 AD for early Christian, 622 AD for Muslim. And what the people groups they classify as having these images are one, traditional Judeo-Christian Muslim cultures, and two, most cultures as an underground view. And they say it's two contrary images. One, following the Semite and Zoroastrian traditions, God's servant, obey or be damned. And then two, that of the Gnostics, similar to the images of the Greek mystery religions, the person saved by self-knowledge. And what they say about these images, or this image that's a mixture, is one, a dominant image that needs to be incorporated into a larger synthesis. So when they say that, what they're meaning by synthesis is how certain beliefs need to be changed and synthesized and mixed in with other beliefs in order to be useful. And then two, they say this image, the early Christian Muslim image of mankind, could contribute to a new self-realization ethic for our culture if incorporated into a larger synthesis. So people have to self-realize. So they're more in favor of the Gnostic view of like self-knowledge, self-realization being what saves human beings. And then they talk about a Zoroastrian image of man, and they date that around 1200 BC, and they say that that image, a Zoroastrian image, has affected all Western cultures in a secular form. And what they say about that image is that the human being having free will, having to choose between good and evil. And they call it the mythology of individual salvation. Now, 1200 BC is when they say that Zoroaster, who Nietzsche called Zarathustra, they say that this person came up with the idea of free will and the choice between good and evil 1200 BC. Although if you study the Bible and history, it was around 1400 BC that the Israelites, the Hebrew Israelites, were freed from slavery in Egypt. And before they came into the Canaanite region, before they left the wilderness and came into the Canaanite region, Joshua told the people, "Choose ye this day whom you will serve." So the idea that free will of choice between good and evil, or who you serve, or what you do with your life, started in 1200 BC is false. That's a false idea. People have had the choice and the free will to choose ever since Adam and Eve chose to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That opened up a freedom of choice. We had no knowledge of evil. Everything was good. Everything that God created in the first 6 days of creation, he said was very good. And God was with Adam and Eve and walked with them and communicated with them. And then they ate what they were told not to. And ever since, human beings have been born with a choice. So 1200 BC, Zoroaster didn't come up with the idea of free will or the choice between good and evil. The first human beings had that choice. They give credit to Zoroaster. But that's 200 years after Moses and Joshua, and thousands of years after Abraham, Noah, Adam and Eve. They say Semite instead of Abrahamic Hebrews. The three faiths, they say, call for slavery to the god or gods are all monotheistic, and they synthesize them together as if they aren't different. And then they go on to say, it is significant that we have come to equate the rise of civilization in the Old World with the emergence of the first literate societies in which small elitist groups hold the keys to a kind of esoteric knowledge which gave them power over their fellow men. As far as we know, this first occurred in the Mesopotamian valley around 3500 BC. It is kind of funny that they say, as far as we know, but date the hunter image, one of the first images of man, they say, date the hunter image 25,000 to 40,000 BC, even though no evidence exists that far back in time. And the Bible's time frame for Nimrod is much closer to their estimate of Semite 2350 BC image of people as slaves to God, which is a misrepresentation of the Israelite beliefs. And you can read the book of Joshua, chapter 24, especially verse 15. And I would also recommend reading Tom Wolfe's Kingdom of Speech. Yeah. Because people have been speaking and probably were writing. Well, the first written language dates back to around 5000 BC, Sumerian texts, and guess what? Humans didn't exist that long before then. Definitely not. No evidence for 250,000 years ago. No scientific evidence. There's made-up imagined evidence. Here's some side notes on this publication. The publisher owned at the time of publication by Robert Maxwell, father of Ghislaine Maxwell. He was born in Czechoslovakia in 1923. He became a British citizen and changed his name. He distributed PROMIS, PROMIS spying software to U.S. and Los Alamos National Labs for Israel during the Cold War. He was Soviet friendly. And he had Pergamum published Soviet science into the U.S. It's pretty hard evidence that Robert Maxwell had known links to MI6, Britain's intelligence, the KGB, Mossad. He employed John Tower, who was on the Senate Committee on Armed Services. He died on his yacht in 1991. They say he fell off it into the ocean. Seymour Hersh of the New Yorker reported Maxwell's alleged spying and fraud before Maxwell's death in The Samson Option, book that Hersh wrote. The Washington Post reported that Hersh's claims were disputed by Britain and Israel, but the Washington Post is a CIA Mockingbird newspaper and will report what CIA, MI6, and Mossad tell them to. But check. November 4th, 1991, Robert Maxwell supposedly had an argument with his son Kevin over meeting with the Bank of England, and Maxwell's default £50 million loans. He didn't go to the meeting. He got on his yacht to Canary Islands on November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. His body was found naked in the ocean with a graze on his left shoulder. Ever seen The Bourne Identity? His official cause of death was ruled to have been caused by heart attack, then drowning. Murder and suicide both ruled out by judge. He was buried on the Mount of Olives. Who was on the ship with him? The last scene of the first season of Terminal List implies to me the producers of that show may know and may have mimicked it slightly. That's a hunch. Not everything I say should be taken as truth, but most of what people who wrote this book and published this book should definitely not be taken as truth. Paul Rosebud, he was a co-owner of the publishing company when Maxwell first got Pergamon Press. He was Australian-born metallurgist and scientific advisor for Springer Verlag in Germany before and during World War II. He worked undercover with Britain during the war. There's a book about his spy work called The Griffin by Arnold Kemisch. It was published by Houghton Mifflin, who never, that publisher was never owned by Maxwell. I don't know, but there was a 1956 disagreement between Rosebud and Maxwell that caused Rosebud to leave in May or be fired. They had both been spies, only Rosebud was a scientist. Pergamon published academic journals on science, tech, engineering, liberal studies. Club of Rome Works, the imprint of Elsevier, which is a Dutch company, publisher of The Lancet, Cell, Science Direct, headquarters in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Their motto is Non Solus, which means not alone, and the logo is a tree entwined with a vine. Elsevier, 1979, Works, Adonis, Article, Delivery over Network Information System. 1991, Tulip, the University Licensing Project, was the first step in creating published, copyrighted material available over the internet, formed the basis for Science Direct in 1997. In 2004, Elsevier started Scopus, Scopus, a multidisciplinary metadata database of scholarly publications known for lobbying against open access because of money and action against academics posting their own articles online. So, censorship. After they talked about previous pages in the chapter, the rise of civilization, in which small elitist groups hold the keys to a kind of esoteric knowledge which gave them power over their fellow men. So back to chapter 2. Those are just some side notes. Chapter 2, they say Taoism and Hinduism both hold potential relevance for the ethical needs of our present culture. An ecological ethic, a self-realization ethic, basically like Stoicism, Plato's idealism, thinking of the universe as an illusory entrapment, which is, according to this image, nothing is to be gained by individuality and effort. The individual, rather, is to play the role into which he has been born. So they semi-agree with Nietzsche, Marx, apartheid, Hitler. They're anti-Christian rebirth. They don't think an individual matters. Yet they do continue with a key element in later Christian image of persons as members one of another. A metaphysical reality that will be elaborated as being an image needing to be revitalized rather than scrapped. So they're semi-okay with Christians as long as we see each other as members one of another, not individuals. And that could be kind of confusing because we are all human. So we have a lot in common on all being humans. We're all sinners. We're all imperfect. We're all invited by God to his mercy, to being forgiven of our sin and changed. But they want to do the change. These publishers of this book want to change people the way they want to change people, not the way God says they can be changed. See, the images of God that believed him have been the most persecuted people in history. They say the Jews have been one of the most failing to realize the Old Testament gives a history of Jews persecuting the Jews who actually followed God. Like, there were many Hebrew Israelite prophets that were persecuted by their own people. There were many kings in Israel and Judah that didn't follow God. You can read 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and you will see that there were many people, because human beings, we're born naturally, and we have no concept of things outside of ourselves as infants. We then get to know our parents, we get to know other people around us, but we have this born innate thing inside of us, which is self-centeredness, which is why Jesus calls people to deny thyself and follow him. And we are given free will. There's an argument amongst Christians of free will and determinism. I think it could be a little bit of both, because can't know anything if it's not. Can't know anything outside of our senses if there was nothing outside of our senses revealed. They ignore Noah and the flood, thinking it is a myth, would trick them into believing that Hebrew Moses wasn't writing of these 200 years before they say Zoroaster began telling these ideas. Gnostics, a synthesis of Babylonian, Indian, Egyptian, Greek, Sufi Muslim, Talmudic Judaism, Zoroastrianism, etc. thoughts. The Gospel of Thomas, Plato's Republic, the Tao Te Ching, Yoga, Bhagavad Gita, etc. Claiming Gnosticism was forced underground because the church condemned it as heretical, denies that the Roman Catholic Church has many pagan Gnostic ideas in it. Many of the early Roman Catholics were Neoplatonists. And the fact that Gnostics in power, by knowledge, did not necessarily want to share it openly with everyone because, as beginning of the chapter states, esoteric knowledge systems keep elitists away from the threat of not controlling the masses of people. They talk a lot of reverence for Rome and its laws. They view the Catholic Church as an extension of Rome, which is true, but they claim Rome hindered Greek science, which they didn't. They just kept it to themselves, like the Bible. They gave Greek science more credit than biblical knowledge for progressing man out of the Dark Ages. Renaissance over Reformation, when actually the intolerance of spreading knowledge by the popes, many Jewish rabbis, Muslim clerics, to everyone prevented both, and actual science and true religion didn't need to be synthesized by people. God made everything and gave us the ability to know him and his creation by his revelation. They call it a Christian view of seeing men as a master over nature, ignoring Genesis 3. They ignore papacy's role in the Renaissance, the Jesuits agreeing with Greek and later false science, so as to keep the people under the church by allowing the popular lies ideas to flourish while still trying to keep the unpopular truth, the Bible, unknown. They say the papacy was losing power at the end of the medieval period. They fail to say how the Roman Catholic Church secularized in order to keep what the Reformation was causing them to lose, power over the people. Then came Freud, Darwin, Nietzsche, B.F. Skinner, and many other scientist intellectuals supposedly opposed to the Roman Catholic Church. Yet this was after the Roman Catholic Church was in debt to the Rothschilds, Zionists, who believe, like B.F. Skinner, the actions of an organism are brought under control by giving it a reward if and only if it behaves in a certain manner, which the Roman Catholic idea before and after the Zionistic bankers took them over financially. They discuss Malthus, the source of Darwinian humanity definition: population control by survival of the fittest. Thinking mankind can be both intrinsically selfish and selfless but just by natural instinct, not by the fall. And they ignored Genesis through Revelation once again. That shows us who we are and why and what we need to live thousands of years before Darwin. Then they say, in the formation of social policies, the most relevant question to ask with regard to such issues is not which view is most true, but rather, what are the likely consequences of acting from one or the other view in active contention? And can a view be found which creatively synthesizes them into a larger conception? No, no. What matters? No. What is true? That's what matters most. Synthesizing true and false is not possible. This thinking is why Pascal is more famous for his wager than his belief in prophecy in the Penzies. Took philosophy class. If you've ever taken like intro to philosophy, you're going to hear probably about Pascal's wager argument. You're not going to be told in a federally funded public school about Pascal's Penzies, where he did make logical, reasonable arguments in the wager, but he actually argued more for the belief in prophecy and the historical accuracy of prophecy being the most likely thing to convince people. Maybe that's why they don't teach that in a lot of the philosophy departments in the civilized world. So they have this subjective truth in morality. It's driving people crazy, but it's also more popular than absolute moral imperatives with trust and forgiveness. They call it the psycho-civilization of society. Manipulation verbally with drugs, entertaining, all method of psychology and information war to enslave people require, according to B.F. Skinner, only if such mentalistic and pre-scientific concepts as will, freedom, consciousness, and so forth are cast off, Skinner asserts, does man have a chance to attain a truly peaceful, rational, and humane society in the future. So he thinks people got to cast off their freedom to choose, freedom to conceive, bring to life. But they want to bring to life a new world created by man, thus trying to steal God's creation from God and his image bearers in the arrogance of thinking only some people can recreate man in the universe, while all normal people and those who believe the truth are to be used up and discarded and rightfully killed if they fight against progress. Thus we have humanism, being the predominant religion globally around 1900, calling its renewal the Enlightenment. They say, this is a vivid contrast to the repressive qualities of the Puritan ethic. Yes, it is. Secular humanism is a vivid contrast to the Puritan ethic. They don't care which one's true. And to call it repressive, well, if people are doing horribly evil things, that they should want to repress those evil things and do good things. And so here's a summary of the Humanist Manifesto, first published in 1933. The universe is self-existing and not created. That's one. Two, man is part of nature and has emerged as a result of a continuous process. So Darwin's theory. Three, reject dualism of mind-body. Brain equals mind. Chemicals. Psychiatry. 4. Religion is culture. Reject revelation. 5. Reject supernatural or cosmic guarantees of human values. Accept scientific spirit and method to undermine them. What is spirit to them? They use the word, but they deny that it's a real thing. Number 6, they're convinced time has passed for theism, deism, modernism, and several varieties of new thought. Every thought but theirs are outdated and wrong. It's funny though, because since 1933, humanism and New Age, Hindu, and shamanism have merged. Number 7, religion is needed, they say. There cannot be a distinction between sacred and secular. That means they just decide what is valued and sacred. People get to decide that. But number 8, human personality, realization as the end, here and now. Number 9, replace old attitudes with collectivism. Number 10, no unique religious emotions or attributes. Number 11, teach humanity to face crisis with knowledge. So what? Abandon hope, abandon trust in God. Just know how to handle crisis. And they're going to teach us. Number 12, religion must increase joy in living. To them, suffering cannot ever amount to good. That's what humanists think. Must increase joy in living. Well, increasing joy is something that God has done for me, and yet my physical and mental duties are sometimes tougher and harder. The joy is the simplification that God offers to people. Like, you do the right thing, you might suffer for it, but it's the right thing to do. Number 13, control all associations and institutions. That's in the Humanist Manifesto. They want to control all associations and institutions. Number 14, demand a shared life in a shared world. Demand it. If you don't want to live life with me the way I want to live it, I'm not going to demand that you do. Number 15, establish satisfactory conditions for every human. Well, that would be great. Yes, satisfactory. But since subjective morality and subjective opinion, different people get to define what satisfies them. Should we establish satisfactory conditions for people that want to murder and rape people? No, we shouldn't. Humanism terms humanists agree on. Number 1, a world order representing all mankind should be created as soon as possible, which contradicts with their number 2 thing they agree on. Every culture and lifestyle that does not destroy human rights should be preserved, because then number 1 doesn't represent all mankind. Number 3, customs, taboos, beliefs, and institutions which cramp the development of human potential should be reformed or abandoned, which contradicts number 2 because of number 4 by saying not all humans have rights if enough humans don't like them. Number 4, the standards which govern man should come from man himself and be cut to his measure. This idea comes from Satan and denies God. It also makes the behavior modification of humans, which it seeks, impossible without being hypocritical, because the potential they deny in number 4 is what they say number 3 should guide to. The potential to create a new world and new humans, but not fully denied with faith in technocracy. They call counterculture important, while also claiming all cultures are to be equally respected, except one that is true and tells humans the limits reality and God has put on them. So they stress counterculture as important and useful while saying every culture is equally good and true. Well, then why counter it? There's a very deep and wide lack of understanding in people that think that human beings are going to correct all of human problems without God. There's many people nowadays speaking about gender being a social construct, and yet wanting humans. Oh, gender was created by humans. It's a social construct made up by humans, and yet they're wanting to reconstruct it. They don't see the illogical, total irrationality of a lot of the things they say. But many of us do, by the grace of God, and God sees it, and He still loves us. So I'm going to keep making some videos about this book. It is, it's been kind of an adventure. Yeah, if gender were a social construct, and if man and woman aren't actually unique and different from one another, and if we think that that view of a man and a woman being together and having children and raising them together so that the children can learn from two different types of humans how to be better humans, and if people think that marriage and small like family is a social construct and they want to reconstruct it because humans haven't been doing that good enough, why are they so arrogant to think that they're going to reconstruct it in a better way? Well, unfortunately, many people are so arrogant in those type of ways, on those type of views, on a lot of different things, because we've been believing lies about humans as the epitome of an evolutionary ladder. Like we're the top creature on this earth. And it's not untrue that we're not animals. We're not highly evolved from different creatures. And God did intend for us to have dominion. But the first humans allowed themselves to be tricked and disobedient to God, and gave up a lot of that dominion to an evil being, Satan, that has deceived a lot of people. And I'm not angry at the people that published their ideas in this book, even though many of them were probably very arrogant in thinking they were doing the right thing and very intelligent. The Bible says that there's many people that are deceived by Satan, the father of lies, and they go on passing along that deception. And I'm hoping that more people will see the truth, and the truth is in the Bible. And He came in the flesh and died for our sins. Not to fix the world by humans fixing it. He died for the sins of the world, and He's going to remake the world new. We don't have to do that. We're not going to save the world by thinking of ourselves as enemies of the ecology of the world. We're to love one another, which means not keeping secret knowledge away from people or thinking that we're so much smarter and experts in how to fix every problem and then demand that people go along with it. I have a lot to say. I've had a lot on my mind for a very long time. But that's about it for chapter 2. I will try to get another video out in the following days on the following chapters and the appendices in the back of this book, and yeah, more to say. So if you found any help in this and want to like and share it, if anybody actually watches it, that's my goal, to get information that I've learned over the years out to people, and also express the truth that we should love one another, and we have to agree with God, who is love. We have to actually believe him in order to do that, because all the good things in life and all of life comes from the source of all good things, a perfect one, who the Lord Jesus Christ is the Son of the Father, who created everything and meant for it to be good, but allowed humans the freedom, and we often abuse it. So, thank you.